Video Pool Media Arts Center and the University of Manitoba campuses and research spaces are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Ininiwak, Anishinaabe, Dakota Yati, Dene, and Inuit, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We recognize that the treaties signed on these lands are a lifelong, enduring relationship, and we are dedicated to upholding their spirit and intent. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and the present. With this understanding, we commit to supporting Indigenous excellence through active reconciliation, meaningful change, and the creation of an environment where everyone can thrive. This event is part of the University of Manitoba's strategic initiative Beyond the Prompt, Generative AI, Creativity, and Responsibility. The initiative is led by Dr. David Watt, Chair of English Theatre, Film, and Media at Faculty of Arts, and coordinated by Dr. Monika Vrecher, Director of the Faculty of Arts Media Lab. The event has been co-organized by Dr. Mark Maher, Assistant Professor at the U of M Faculty of Architecture. The event is funded by the University of Manitoba's Strategic Initiatives Support Fund and co-sponsored by the U of M Faculty of Arts, the U of M Faculty of Architecture, and Video Pool Media Arts Center. Suzanne Kite is an artist, composer, and scholar whose work merges Lakota knowledge systems with performance, sound, sculpture, and computational media. Her artworks and performances have recently been featured at the 2024 Whitney Biennial, Haus der Kulturen der Welt, Berlin, Center for Art Research and Alliances, New York, and the 2024 Shanghai Biennial, among other venues. Kite is director of Wihahan Blesa Center for Indigenous AI, a national endowment for the Humanities Design Humanities Research Center at Bard College, where she is Distinguished Artist in Residence and Assistant Professor of American and Indigenous Studies. Suzanne is co-PI and co-director of the International Abundant Intelligences Research Program. Suzanne Kite is presenting Dreaming into Systems, Lakota Semiotics and AI. This talk was recorded at Video Pool Media Arts Center on January 31st, 2026.
All right, here we are. Takiapi ki glonia hawi Suzanne Kite macha pika sto Los Angeles et ahana la hala mohikania komina latie. Aglala hamacha chante wachte na pe chiusapi. Shake your hands with a happy heart. My name is Suzanne Kite, and I live on the Mohican homelands. My folks are from a area of the United States called Pine Ridge Reservation, and we all have a lot of relatives there, and particularly close to my great-grandmother Evelyn Stover's house near No Flesh Creek. And a lot of my thinking and research comes through certain folks in my family, relatives seen here. So I want to start by acknowledging my amazing team at Abundant Intelligences and at the Wahambisa Center. These are just a small number of the people I get to work with every day, including Yarrow, the dog. And and I get to be here with research assistants as well, who are at the University of Manitoba. I'm so excited to talk in a bit. So, a lot of this work is experimental and also technological, and we are working very hard to be grounded in our communities and to be grounded in our steering committee and our Lakota relatives who help guide and shape this process. I want to start with some quotes and some questions to frame. This is one of my favorite Borges texts. From the remote depths of the corridor, the mirror spied upon us. We discovered, such a discovery is inevitable in the late hours of the night, that mirrors have something monstrous about them. Some of my framing questions are: how can we rest amidst police terrorism, or amidst perpetual and ongoing genocide? How can we dream if we cannot rest? And how will we make meaning without dreams? I usually start my talks with inviting you to think about what your definition of a dream is. and what dreams do you use in your practice, whether they're overt or subtle. So just to give a little lead up into my practice, I am a performance artist, a composer, and I started my career by making interactive interfaces. This was about 2015, and as I got really into them, that was the moment when it was possible for artists to start using machine learning. So I learned how to use Wekinator and made my first machine learning work in 2018. I still do a lot of this performance style with sensor systems, with Touch Designer, MoveSense sensors, and different workshops for students, dancers, and musicians. So we're going to use a word today a lot, cosmology-scape. Cosmology-scape is a word I first heard used by Jolene Ricard, Haudenosaunee artist and scholar. I imagine the cosmology-scape to be my body's relationship between the landscape and the cosmos, the point at which my body is at the center of those two, interacting with non-human beings, both seen and unseen, knowable and unknowable, on Earth and in the stars. So to me, the cosmology-scape is the hinge of my body's movement of knowledge from one world into this one, and from this one into the other world. My perception of the cosmology-scape, my experience of it, is through the creation of new things, the creation of art, of words, of conversations, of relationships. And I use this term in many ways, one of which is to describe what we call the hollow bone of the body's ability to channel knowledge between worlds, the relationship between body, landscape, and cosmos, the point at which the body is centered within interactions with non-human beings. So for this, I use this insufficient word dreaming to describe the body's experience of the transfer of knowledge from one world and to this one and back again. Dreaming. And the cosmology-scape is, to me, how I understand the movement of meaning. So there is respect for unknowability in Lakota philosophies, a concern for mutual reciprocity with the world that supersedes the desire to know all, that allows dreaming, which sometimes feels like incomplete knowledge, to be prioritized. So this artwork called Iron Road is the first piece that helped me realize the power of the Lakota visual language. And this piece was a collaboration between myself, Corey Stover, and Becky Redbow, where we talked through the story of my great-grandmother, who was named Iron Road, and her escape from the Wounded Knee Massacre. And we moved this story into the Lakota visual language and then made this sculpture. And actually, this was first shown at a plugin. And so dreaming as a concept came up because as I started to interview many Lakota people about where their designs come from, where their songs come from, they said, oh, I got it in a dream, I saw it in a vision, I prayed for it, and it came to me. And this idea of dreaming kept coming up again and again. And the idea of dreaming troubled me because of its unknowability. And as an academic, I was being pulled away from the way of the unknowingness of art and pulled towards trying to have to prove myself all the time. But dreaming retains its unknowability. It's exciting because of the impossibility of fully pinning meaning down. There is an impenetrability of our dreams by other forms of consciousness. What's inside our head is still somewhat protected. So Laura Harjo, my colleague and collaborator, told me, among Creek folks, our relatives visit to be in relation. If you dream about relatives in the spiritual realm, it's understood that they are concretely visiting, just as they would have when they were here in material form. That's a strong belief. Clementine Bordeaux, my cousin, tells me, dreaming and vision seeking are important on both a grand scale and in the everyday. We wake up and think that meant something. It may not be grand, but it is significant. So in these projects, I want to put dreaming and dreams back into the most important place where knowledge moves from one world to the next. So in the center here is the Lakota visual language as sort of summarized in this chart by a Lakota scholar and designer Sadie Redwing. And the word for dreaming and visioning in Lakota is ihamble. And you need context in a sentence to say whether it's sleeping or waking or whatever. In Lakota culture, geometries first made from paint on parfleche and quills bent at 45, 90-degree angles took the dreams of women and people who do women-style work and transformed them through the human body, through the human hand, and onto things that are wearable and usable. And those things that are made are sites of communicating with the objects that display the geometry and through those objects into towards and communicating with ghosts or spirits. So just to show some differences in art styles, this is what's called a men's art style. These are more women's art styles because they're in geometric form, but they're given to adorn men. And then I really love this example because it's a combination of the two. There's double woman, who I'll describe, who's bringing this bundle. There's what we see, dragonflies, there's pipes depicted, there's teepees in the clouds, homes in the clouds, stars, Capemni, twisting vortexes. And this is listed as possibly a two-spirit bundle, which is amazing. Clementine Bordeaux says, so often in our community, when you dream of double woman, then you are inspired to do the most beautiful work. When you dream of double woman, you are then emboldened to create things that are aesthetically pleasing to our communities at levels other folks can't achieve. So double woman is the bringer of art through dreams. And this is a depiction of her in doll form. So to me, I started thinking about this as a language, and though it has never been studied in a linguistic way, it has meaning, as fixed meaning. You can read it, it's legible. And when the creator of, let's say, a bag puts the design onto the bag that comes from a dream, that creator does not necessarily make the meaning and interpret the meaning of that dream. They gift that wearable to somebody else to use in ceremony, and then that person gets to contemplate the meaning of that design for the rest of their life. That idea of transmission of knowledge is very interesting. So I always want to. So I'm a musician, and so I really am always thinking in music worlds, and this idea of dreaming, this kind of dreaming. I'm using the word dreaming in English to describe it, but it's encompassing a lot more than that. Beyond the definitions used in science, beyond this old idea that dreams were only supposed to be narrative and in REM sleep. Now we can consider the waking dream, and I really consider playing music and improvising waking dream. And anybody who's performed on stage knows that you can be taken by the movement of something else through you into the world. And I started to make scores with this Lakota visual language. This is one for the Silk Road Ensemble. So this is a score made of the musicians' dreams. I think there were about 12 musicians. And then it was shaped into the Lakota visual language for the instrumentalists to then reinterpret. So where Western semiotics separates the signifier from the signified, Lakota semiotics joins them through relationships, through reinterpretation, through gifting. So meaning is not assigned, but co-created with the viewer, the maker, and the material. Each shape acts both as sign and as event, an act of meaning and motion. So I call this dream to design methodology, and it's designed to reactivate the visual language as more of a living semiotic field of interaction instead of just a static image. It provides a flexible, symbolic vocabulary that connects dream imagery, cultural narratives, and our cosmological structures while preserving our sort of individual sovereignty of interpretation. I love that this is the bag. I think I put this bag on the flyer. I love this bag at the St. Louis Art Museum. You have these two massive capemnes that are also mountains that are connecting the stars in the land, and these two giant symbols for thunder. So our linguistic research into this language treats each Lakota symbol as a potential unit of maybe proto-language, similar to how phonemes or morphemes combine in spoken language. By examining how symbols cluster, repeat, or transform across stream narratives, we can build an early grammar of visual meaning. But where Western semiotics separates, I already said that. Yes, I did mean to say that. Right, computation. When we work with these symbols in computational space, what we're doing is we're seeking to embed them in a high dimensional space where the closeness of meaning between symbols reflects the semantic or relational similarity. This will allow us to study how Indigenous visual grammars operate within a relational geometry of meaning, revealing structural rules without freezing definitions. So the way I'm seeing this is that dreaming is a form of communication, a mode through which knowledge travels. Dreams are not a symbolic puzzle to decode, but dialogues with more than human beings. So when we dream, we enter the waking dream state of making, like in beadwork, our attention becomes relational to these other beings. So any of these projects that I'm going to talk about, their goal is not to translate dreams into Western categories or into English, but to study how meaning emerges non-verbally and relationally through effective forms. I think one of the interesting things that drew me into these research questions was the visceral feeling of trying to describe let's say a sleep dream to another person, and you can feel the dream disintegrating and being reconfigured by the verbal part of your mind while you're trying to describe it. And to me, that's very meaningful that Lakota women have this way of making. We didn't develop a written language that has been acknowledged by the American government, but we have developed. Clearly, this is a written language that just doesn't pin down meaning the way that English does, or even Lakota Yapi does. So the questions that I'm asking, to me, link this scientific and even metaphysical goals of this project, approaching dreaming and geometry and cognition as relational systems of knowledge. So some of these core questions are: what is the connection between nonverbal language and meaning? What can Indigenous methods of meaning making teach us about the complexities intersection with ethics? How can Indigenous methods of non-cognitive, I meant to put non-conscious decision making, inform AI system building? And then our really heady question around our EEG work is: can we build shared latent spaces that respect Lakota symbolic logic, reveal context-sensitive meaning, and support human decision-making without collapsing ambiguity? And can we do it in a good way? So I want to take a second to talk about AI. What a dirty word. We've been working in our research cohort with AI since, like I said, about 2018. In 2019, we started to publish and write together. The first time I spoke about AI was with Jackson Two Bears in Ottawa in 2019. And now in 2026, we're on this gigantic project together. And I came at the question of AI from an ontological perspective, from an extremely materialist perspective. I know that my grandfather and we pray together with stones, and stones can have the potential to be living beings, to be animate. And what are computers but melted stones? So some of the publications are Making Kin with the Machines, and the other one is Indigenous Protocols for Artificial Intelligence position paper, where we talk through some of these preliminary arguments. I have been working on slides for my community to talk about what AI is, and so I'm just going to show a few of them. I'm not assuming that you don't know what AI is, but yeah, let me try them. Let me try them out. What is AI? Artificial intelligence refers to disciplines like mathematics, statistics, and linguistics that enable machines to process information, recognize patterns, and solve problems. So our working definition of AI is that it operates through algorithms and step-by-step instructions that guide a machine's behavior, allowing it to analyze data, make predictions, and improve over time. But AI does not think. It performs complex mathematical operations based on human design models. So many AI systems right now use what's called machine learning, which is a method where they refine their performance by identifying patterns in large data sets. AI can recommend movies based on viewing history, recognize faces in photos, generate images, and even assist doctors in diagnosing diseases. While AI enhances daily life, it also raises ethical concerns such as job displacement, privacy, bias in data, and the need for responsible use. So there are so many fields that are contributing to AI, and to us in our research, we feel that Indigenous people should be, if we're going to be forced to use these machines, and they're going to affect our lives, then we should be able to enter into any of these fields and affect and develop our own systems. So there have been many Indigenous contributions to AI and computing, but I really feel that beadwork and quillwork and weaving, especially Navajo weaving, has sophisticated mathematical principles. And Indigenous artistic and scientific practices demonstrate how our knowledge systems are forms of encoded information long before the digital age. We believe very strongly that each Indigenous government should have the sovereign right to determine which technologies they use and how they use them. And hopefully we can help develop tools so they have the capacity to develop their own. There are lots of opportunities in AI for Indigenous communities: language, healthcare, environmental protection. We've had some amazing projects in our research program that are doing things I couldn't even explain. I'd like to. Fire protection, satellite monitoring, fish hatchery in Hawaii. But of course, we're extremely concerned with the issues of data sovereignty and consent, bias and misinterpretation, environmental destruction, and the impact on our knowledge systems. So the research program that I am co-directing is led by Jason Lewis, Hemi Wahanga, Sarah Diamond, Jackson Two Bears, myself, and Kareem Jerby. And what we're trying to do is envision AI that fosters care, reciprocity, and ethical relationships between humans and non-humans. Just gonna go through some of these. So we're trying to develop AI tools that prioritize our community's benefit and address structural biases through rethinking intelligence, quote unquote intelligence, through diverse epistemologies. And most importantly to me, I'm a real methodology nerd, that I'm very passionate that Indigenous methodologies, when inserted and pushing themselves into any field, can be helpful and useful. I love this quote by our colleague Brian Kawada, who says, "We live in the future, come join us." Emphasis my own. So there are a lot of partners in this amazing project, and we're very excited to have very grounded community knowledge holders in each project. If you check out the website, you can see all these people's amazing work. I'll just say, to finish my little AI spiel, these are some of the projects I'm super excited about. The advancements with Maori speech have been amazing. This soil ecology project and our friends at the Lakota AI Code Camp have been doing amazing work. So when I talk to my own community about AI, sometimes we end up only talking about like chatbots when there are so many creative and amazing possibilities. The one I am personally really excited about is the land and water defense using remote sensing and satellite image machine learning. And also climate adaptation, which uses environmental modeling, reinforcement learning, and predictive machine learning to address our urgent needs in our communities. But part of the way that we sell this to our amazing funders, who we are so grateful to, is that not only do we help our communities, but we help the rest of the world by caring for the things that Indigenous people care for. All right, back to my weird world of semiotics. But first, before I describe some of the research projects that we've been doing, I want to describe where this research and data will live soon. I'm calling it my dream server. I'm sure I'll give it a cooler Lakota name soon. Built with the help of our Abundant Intelligence's colleagues in Aotearoa, Six Nations, and Hawaii, we dream of a sovereign server with Indigenous protocols guarding our precious knowledge. This server has a meaning and fulfills a need in our communities to store our data safely. So in my project, which uses EEG and semantic mapping, we have these EEG rhythms that modulate our system, but importantly, we have our dream entries, our EEG traces, we have the dream designs, we have the archive of designs from the community, we have interviews with our relatives, all the things that we collect in a research project. But hopefully it's living on this data server. We are doing all this really amazing research into all the ways that our partners internationally are finding ways to use Indigenous protocols to protect their data. There have been some really awesome systems that are being built. So we can have consent, access, deletion rules enacted. Consent is reversible at any time. Community oversight, community-led protocols. And most importantly is location. Not all of our communities have places with computational power. Some of our communities don't even have the electricity needs that we need to do computation, but some of our friends at other nations do. So that is exciting, and a nation-to-nation project. And finally, my hope is that this data set, this research becomes accessible, interactive, and can live within the community and be a part of our daily lives. If we want to learn more about our visual language, we have somewhere to go look. Okay, so now here are our weird experiments that on this path. So I'm going to show a couple projects that were led by my postdoctoral fellow, Antoine Belmar. The first one's called Oniris, and it's a collective dream map, identifying relation between individual dreams to create a sort of collective story. So all of these dreams were entered, and either you could immediately delete what you entered or consent to have it be put in this collective dream. At the Museum of Contemporary Native Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we had a really awesome show last year in March. And we're able to see the connections and the distance between individuals' dreams. And this was really fun and interactive. So we had this sort of custom interface and a tablet and a commercial EEG where you could see your own dreaminess state. Because one of my favorite things about human dreaming is that we actually dream all day, every day, and it's more of a fluctuation of how dreamy we are being, the dreamiest state we're in. So after working through this project, Antoine became very ambitious and made this project called Decoding Ambiguous Signs. And I will give you a little tour of this. This is my favorite thing. So this is my dream I'm entering, a dog running towards me with excitement. And now I'm able to see, based on a single interview, so which is like we haven't started our interview phase of this project. So a single interview was done, and now I'm able to see the distance and kind of meanings graphed of this dream within my Lakota visual language context, which is super interesting. So this is sort of what I would take and now maybe experiment with performing this or beating this or dancing this if I'm working with some of my dance colleagues. All right. But as we know, AI struggles with details at this point, and we're not going to have a mega large model of all of these interviews. This is a very small data set. So therefore, as we know, AI does struggle with semiotics. It struggles with interpretation and meaning. And right now, the most highly funded artificial intelligence systems are those which have become commercially viable because of their ability to mimic human language. But why is human language and the written word assumed to be so inherently good for the world? There is nothing about mimicry that implies goodness or truth for an entire community. Humans with great power have destroyed our ecosystems, and perhaps it is language itself that has gotten us into this mess. Perhaps we cannot think our way out of it. Conscious thinking, I mean. Laura Harjo says, they already have everything else of ours, our land, you know. They already have everything, and they can't have what's in our minds. So to me, I've always thought of AI as itself as a desire for connection back to the human and non-human, the seen and unseen. And that is a desire seen in the exploration of data, questioning points of meaning, where meaning comes from, to me, pulls deeper into the trouble of meaning making itself. Antoine said, dream language, this visual language she's referring to, challenges artificial intelligence's dominant paradigm by offering a more fluid and nonlinear structure, highlighting the limitations of existing AI tools. This underscores the boundaries of our current technology and points to new possibilities. Dreaming and creating from dreams most importantly requires protocols and ethics, requires the very protocols and ethics which our communities demand of any data set. Clementine Bordeaux says, in this project, consent can be taken away at any time, even if we've gotten all the permissions up to a certain point. If someone says, I don't want this shared, we're ready to take things back and put them where they don't need to be shared publicly. So the way, if you have experience working with these English language models, such as ChatGPT, they treat language as linear, rational, and disembodied, sort of flattening the branching and relational powers inherent to other forms of thought, such as Indigenous thought. To me, dreaming provides a counterexample, a nonlinear system of cognition that is complex and alive. To me, dreaming demonstrates that meaning arises communally through this sort of gifting is an example of that, of gifting the images of the dreams. Dreaming resists the idea that truth is created by individuals or especially by machines. The focus on verbal language as the highest form of intelligence narrows the field of cognition to what can be textualized, but dreaming can reopen it. I'm not going to read all of this. Is how you know I'm early in the research, because the very wordy slides. So I'll just read you the question on each slide. How do nonverbal, relational, and dream-based systems generate meaning? And sort of this is kind of how I'm breaking down how I'm going to explore, how I am exploring this. Ontology of dreams, relational epistemology. My next big question is, what do Indigenous methods of meaning making teach us about the intersection of complexity and ethics, so thinking through data sovereignty and consent, relational accountability, protocols, and the question of how can indigenous methods of non-cognitive decision-making inform AI system design. And so we're thinking about that through neurofeedback loops, Lakota-informed, Lakota-made interfaces, this idea of the dreaminess index. So Lakota and many indigenous epistemologies hold cognition and ethics together. Including newer human-made technologies are no different. Knowing, this idea of knowing, generates responsibility. To encounter another, a person, a being, a dream, an object, is to enter into relation, which requires an ethics which already includes non-human beings, whether we acknowledge them or not. Lakota epistemology offers a long-standing model of distributed intelligence that is embodied and ethical, regardless of the terms used to describe a sort of distributed cognition. I'm taking this from Catherine Hale's idea of technological assemblage. Indigenous knowledge provides methods for participation within that assemblage. Cognitive relation is specific. It's between this person and this spirit, this material, this site. But meaning grows from the hyperlocality of our knowledges in place. And that's, again, where I find this word cosmology-scape to be very helpful to describe an ethical, ecological system where cognition and place cannot be separated. Ihambla, the Lakota word for dream or vision, either waking or asleep, is a wonderful site to me for investigating a form of non-conscious decision-making. Ihambla can be many things. Perhaps it is a waking dream state, as observed in our sustained beadwork practices. Perhaps the beadwork involves dynamic combinations of our alpha and theta oscillations, maintaining awareness while facilitating access to intuitive and unconscious processes. That dreaming reveals the motion of knowledge, continually testing the limits of our perception and comprehension. In this beadwork practice, non-conscious cognition, dreaming, making, sensing moves through our community responsibilities. In that way, dreaming is not only distributed cognition, fancy term for it, but an event that calls for decisions, actions, sometimes ceremonies, choice. Decisions emerge from intuition, rhythm and repetition. Color, form, and pattern arise through a kind of reasoning distributed across the hand, the thread, the breath. Cognition occurs through the making and through continuous adjustments and tearing your beadwork out and listening to critique. To me, I've been very interested in EEG because it allows us to listen to the rhythms of attention that we can't quite pick out on our own. And those accompany the moment when form turns into meaning. We are not extracting thought. EEG doesn't listen to your thoughts, but it witnesses the physiological traces of relational focus, the same patterns found in beadwork or dreaming or sleeping or talking. Catherine Hales writes, working together in recursive cycles, human conscious analysis, human non-conscious cognition, and technical cognition can expand the range and significance of insights beyond what each can accomplish alone. So to me, by encoding relational geometries and dream grammars into AI models, we build systems capable of holding the multiplicity and context of our work. The result is a shift from extraction to co-creation, machines that can help recognize ambiguity as meaning rather than error. Because meaning is relational, every interpretive act carries ethical weight. Our protocols position sovereignty and consent as part of a semiotic structure itself. The ability to withdraw, to redact, or hide a symbol is not only an ethical practice, but it reflects the relational nature of this language. In our 2019 work, Making Kin with the Machines, I argue that to create ethical relations with and through AI requires an ontology that already includes non-human beings. Stones can have interiority, and computers, as I said, are just melted stones. These objects are already networked outside ourselves. In Indigenous communities, relationships with non-human beings are political, ecological, historical. These connections rest on millennia of covenants. No external system can represent or defend those relations on our behalf. Our grounded sovereignty is necessary to any ethical technological future. So without Indigenous sovereignty frameworks, Indigenous epistemologies are too easily absorbed into Western theory without their responsibility. They cannot be cherry-picked from. The technological assemblage, stripped of political and epistemological sovereignty, is the same decimating force that brought upon us our current ecological apocalypse. To me, my practice and the research I'm trying to do is trying to practice the shift from extraction to relation. Every data set, EEG trace, symbolic image should be governed by the community from which it originates. Ethics lives within the code and within the structure of participation. Western epistemology continues to privilege written language as measure of thought, yet language is only one mode of knowing. Our dreamings and songs and geometry also transmit epistemologies, circulating through our communities and generations. So, the goal of my research is not to build new abstract frameworks, but to maintain practices that already model our ethical relations. Our work within Abundant Intelligence research program seeks towards technologies that listen, reciprocate, and remain accountable to the systems of life that sustain them. So this is a forthcoming paper, book chapter in a book on Indigenous methods for AI. And this chapter has way too many authors, but it's hopefully a good chapter. In it, you'll be able to read our thoughts on dreaming as co-creative protocol, ethics, consent, and safeguards, specifically in the way that we can co-create with Indigenous knowledge and cognitive science. Okay, finally to the art part that we're all going to talk about today. I want to introduce this project, Cosmologyscape. So Cosmologyscape is a project that Alicia B. Wormsley and I started in 2020 during the pandemic online. And it was originally called a workshop for Black and Indigenous artists to dream. And we wanted to use this project to connect with our peers, and we didn't feel like there were a lot of specifically Black and Indigenous projects. And in the US, it's very important that our communities work together. And what we ended up making as a public art project was this cosmic quilt. And you can enter at any time at cosmologyscape.com, and when you enter, you can contribute your dreams, you can follow a dream path, and as you enter your dreams, I'll skip forward to the entering, you answer some questions, and there's no AI, there's just Black and Indigenous logics of meaning, and you're provided a tea recipe that go with the feelings from your dream, and you're given this digital quilt square that reforms every time you look at it. And there's some, there are going to be some new dream paths soon. And this project is, that's Alicia. I love Alicia. And this project is site-specific to every place. So if you go see it in a gallery, the digital dream quilt will be specific to that gallery, that community. We've done a lot of textile work over the years together, but the most exciting part was developing our methodology. And our methodology is us. We get together and dream together, Alicia and I, and then we invite a group of core dreamers to contribute, to have a nice weekend together, and then we develop these dream paths to share with the world. And then we take these and we take the data from this Cosmologyscape project and we make it legible to musicians to reinterpret. These are the musicians the first time we did that. and then we even make seating. So this was a very rudimentary process to take the data and make these outdoor benches, and these were installed in Brooklyn. And coming up at Wagner Foundation in Boston, we will be these are like super work in progress photos where this is going to be a mural on the wall, and then these are in progress quilts. We made 9 quilts because we like to suffer, and the quilts are going to live in the murals with really specific symbols that explain in a visual way. I love methodology graphics. The methodology for each step of this process. And so it's a very large mural, and sort of they'll go inside and you'll be able to read exactly how the symbols map them. And and that'll open end of February. But I think I'll stop there, and we can talk about more parts of benches. Here is a quote to end on. My late grandfather, Mahpia Naji, when I asked him if the future was a dangerous place, he said, "Spirits and ancestors are just there on the other side trying to help." So, Wopila.
This recording was produced by University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts Media Lab. Video recording by Ekamjit Singh. Sound recording by Eusebio Lopez Aguilar. Editing by Ekamjit Singh. Research and organizational support by Madison Bale.